Do you want to know how I got to be all alone? Man up? It began with 4 dumb words. Everyone has issues. I had no idea how much those remarks would cost me. However, here we are. I'm 32-year-old Vicky, and I'm going to tell you how I ruined the greatest thing in my life because I couldn't bear the suffering of others. For 7 years, Reed and I were together. I spent 7 years creating what I believed to be the ideal life. All of that Pinterest-perfect nonsense that everyone acts like matters was there for us. A starter home in the suburbs, consistent paychecks, and weekend brunches with friends. We both agreed that my position in luxury sales was far more spectacular than Reed's dull office job. In any case, we were stable. Last winter, the first indications appeared. Reed began to become more reserved, calling off get-togethers and spending weekends in bed, all while pretending he was simply exhausted. Who isn't exhausted after all? You don't see me skipping Lacey's birthday dinner, which I helped organize for weeks, even though I'm exhausted too. I was upset when I got home that evening, and he was sitting there like a ghost in the dark. He stared at his unfinished food and muttered, "Vicky, I think I might be depressed." I literally laughed. Is that even possible? In fact, I chuckled at him. Dude, man up. Everybody has issues. Do you believe I'm not under stress? Today, I lost that enormous commission. I should have recognized the expression on his face. My mom keeps calling about Christmas plans, and Janine is already showing off her new kitchen renovation, but you don't see me hiding in bed all day. Something is shattering. However, I was too preoccupied with my own affairs to give a damn. I kept asking myself, God, when did he get so dramatic? His father was correct when he said that he was very sensitive. I kept that chat from everyone, even Lacey, who is well-informed. Rather, I explained to her and the others that I was being very patient with Reed because he was going through a difficult time. At home, I began to keep track of everything in the interim. In the event that I prepared dinner 3 times in a row, I would hurl it at him during arguments. The thing that annoyed me the most was the way he handled our finances. I handle everything around here while you're too busy feeling sorry for yourself. My money for shopping was always kept apart. Why must I justify every purchase I make? But I thought he would pay the utilities and the mortgage. Isn't that fair? I quickly shut him down when he said that he was cutting back since his workload was becoming too much. Not my problem. He was incapable of managing the obligations of an adult. In retrospect, there were several small instances where I might have made a huge difference, such as when he attempted to show me an article about the symptoms of sadness, and I chose to browse Instagram instead. Or when Belle tried to convince me that I was dismissing Reed's feelings because she reads self-help books and believes she is a therapist. Please, I'm more familiar with my lover than some aspiring psychology major. I told everyone that he was simply in a bad mood. He'll get over it. However, he didn't. He was unable to get out of it. He deteriorated, began to lose weight, called in sick to work, and began to forget our recent chats. To be honest, it was inconvenient and embarrassing. Have you ever had to justify to others why your partner abruptly leaves events early or cancels at the last minute? As I watched Janine and her husband Mark appear so flawless, I was constantly left with excuses. She never had to ask him to refill her wine glass. During our quiet car drives home, I would ask Reed, "Why can't you just try harder?" Everybody has something to deal with. You're not unique. I was unaware at the time that something inside of him was dying each time I spoke those words. I was too preoccupied with how his troubles were impacting me, too preoccupied with feeling ashamed of his unexpected lack of drive, too preoccupied with contrasting our relationship with the highlights of everyone else's. After that, things deteriorated. Relationships are said to need effort. Well, I was working hard, putting in extra hours to make Reed feel like a piece of trash whenever he didn't meet my expectations. My patience was worn thin by months of his despair. I began to take advantage of his emotions. I would yell, "This is why nobody wants to be around you anymore," whenever he asked me to miss another dinner with my coworkers. I had a terrible sense of satisfaction from seeing the hurt on his face, as if I had won a point. The stories of what occurred at home and what individuals witnessed were quite different. I informed him that morning that his attire was as pitiful as his demeanor, but at Janine's housewarming I was like, "Reed's been under so much pressure at work, but he's pushing through it like a champ." Even I found the difference startling. At times, but I told myself I was only pretending to be brave for the public. I should have been relieved when Reed finally scheduled a therapy session. I panicked instead. How would he describe me? Would he see that he was capable of more? So I did what any girlfriend who was completely sane would do. In order to ruin his appointments, I made up emergencies. 20 minutes prior to his appointment, I would text, "My car broke down. Can you come get me?" Or, to make him too tired to go, I would pick a big quarrel the night before. The therapist was unable to accommodate him for another month after he rescheduled for the third time. The issue has been resolved. In the meantime, I was ignoring Dax, my former co-worker who, despite his flirtatious texts, was always just a friend. I would question Reed for hours if he ever brought up a female co-worker. I didn't understand the double standard at all. "Who is she? Why is she texting you after work hours? Let me see your phone." The clashes became uglier. I began utilizing information he had confided in me against him. I knew I had crossed a line I couldn't get back the instant I said, "No wonder your dad walked out when you were 8. He probably couldn't stand your constant neediness either." But I doubled down rather than apologized, caused him to reflect. He was worthy. Once my friend Belle made an attempt to confront me. I was in the middle of ranting about how Reed had embarrassed me by hardly speaking at a work gathering when we went out for coffee. "Do you actually hear yourself? The way you talk about him is concerning." "Excuse me," Vicky interjected. I put on my best, "You've got to be kidding" expression for her. "What I cope with is beyond your comprehension. Simply because you and Kyle have such a wonderful relationship, right?" We reached our lowest point following my department's quarterly dinner, and I was thinking, this has some nerve. She's just jealous I have someone who puts up with me. Desperate to keep up the appearance that we were still the ideal couple that everyone admired, I had all but forced Reed to go. He had taken a shower, dressed nicely, and even tried to strike up a conversation. However, his smile never reached his eyes, and I could tell he was having difficulty. Reed discreetly excused himself to go to the restroom while my supervisor, Angela, was rambling on about sales estimates. He was gone for perhaps 10 minutes. Apparently, I thought that was too long. When he came back, I hissed, "What is wrong with you?" The quarterly figures were about to be revealed by Angela. "You couldn't hold it for 5 more minutes?" My colleague Trish later inquired about Reed's job as we were chatting over dessert. He stammered out his answer, forgetting specifics of a project he had brought up. "He's been working so hard he can't even remember what day it is anymore." I joined in, laughing too loudly, but I noticed Trish frowning slightly. I blew up on the way home. "You made me look like I'm dating an incompetent man-child. All you had to do was act normal for 3 hours. 3 hours, Reed." "I tried," he replied meekly. "I'm not feeling well." "You're never feeling well," I yelled. "It's always something with you." I resumed my tirade, enumerating every perceived slight and embarrassing moment from the evening before we had even reached the door. Reed endured the verbal abuse while standing in our kitchen, staring at the floor, until all of a sudden he stopped. The words, "I can't do this anymore, Vicky," were so quiet that I nearly missed them. It took a while for his meaning to sink in. "Do what?" "Act like a functioning adult. I've been having thoughts." He paused, his voice trembling. About ending things. Not just us. Everything. When it did, I was angry rather than horrified or worried. Anger that is white hot. Are you seriously threatening suicide right now because I called you out on your behavior? That's emotional blackmail, Reed. His face trembled. I'm trying to tell you how bad things have gotten. I need help. What you need is to stop manipulating. Me, I yelled back. Poor Reed, so sad and broken that everyone has to walk on eggshells around him. I'm sick of it. If you're so miserable, why don't you just leave? I didn't mean to be rude. Not at all. It was just one more tool in my toolbox, one more way to harm him. I didn't think he would really think about it. Liam arrived at our door after 3 days. I didn't anticipate him. He hadn't been mentioned by Reed. However, I could tell something was off the instant I laid eyes on Liam's face. His normal, pleasant smile was gone. He continued. Reed asked me to come by, as he passed me and entered the house. He's packing some things. I followed him upstairs and saw Reed carefully packing things into a suitcase. Packing for what? I asked. It was an old gym bag that I had pushed to the back of the closet because it looked cheap, not our matching luggage set. With my heart instantly pounding, I shouted, What's going on? Taking a few books from the nightstand, Liam remarked, Reed's going to stay with me for a while. Who? When Reed finally turned to face me, I felt sick to my stomach because of the emptiness in his eyes. We had a fight, couples fight. This isn't about our fight, Vicky. This is about the past year. I can't live like this anymore. I quickly changed my strategy, going from outrage to negotiation. Baby, come on. I know things have been stressful. We can work on it. Maybe try that couples counseling you mentioned? Reed said, I tried talking to you for months before closing the bag. You told me to man up. You said my feelings weren't real. The words I was trying to help you spilled out of my mouth. You've been so negative lately. He's been depressed, Vicky, Liam interrupted. Clinically depressed. Not sad, not negative, depressed. And instead of supporting him, you've been tearing him down. Liam went on. I found his therapy journal, pointing to a notebook I knew he had begun to keep after you ruined his real therapy sessions. My face was burning. You went through my things? Saying softly. It was in his desk drawer, Vicky, Reed remarked. You're the one who's been going through it. There are notes in the margins in your handwriting. For that, I had no defense. Using his private thoughts as weapons, I had been reading them and adding brief remarks to let him know that I had noticed his worst anxieties and insecurities. And this. Liam took his phone out. He pressed play, and my voice filled the room as he said, Reed didn't know I was recording when we talked last month. If you don't pull yourself together and show up tonight, don't bother coming home at all. I'm sick of making excuses for why my boyfriend acts like a pathetic loser. In the initial week following Reed's departure, I persuaded myself that he would return. I wavered between anger and self-pity, between preparing an apology and a revenge plot. I mentally reframed our whole relationship. I was the victim, not the bad guy. I had been honest. I hadn't been unkind. I had been helpful in my own manner, not domineering. I started what I now understand to be a full-scale smear campaign. By telling my meticulously constructed version of events to anyone who would listen, I got ahead of the story. I would add, Reed's going through some personal issues, while maintaining a composed, worried expression. His family has a history of mental instability. I tried everything to help him, but he refused treatment. I'm honestly worried about him. A few people purchased it. Bless her naive heart, Lacey gave me wine and told me I was done. You can't help someone who won't help themselves, she said, paring back the very line I'd fed her. When Reed didn't respond to my first wave of texts, the angry ones demanding he come get the rest of his stuff, or the second wave, The manipulative ones about how I was worried sick about him. I escalated. I showed up at Liam's apartment unannounced. I created fake social media accounts to monitor Reed and anyone who might be helping him. I screenshot anything that could be useful. Photos of him looking happy made me furious. How dare he smile without me? My most desperate move came 3 weeks after he left. I called him at 2 a.m., sobbing. I think I might be pregnant. I lied, knowing his deep desire for a family someday. I don't know what to do, Reed. He met me the next day at a cafe, public neutral ground. I'd spent hours on my appearance, showing up in the sweater he'd always loved, hair done exactly how he preferred. But something had changed. He sat across from me, not with anger or hurt, but with something worse. Detachment. I know you're not pregnant, Vicky, he said calmly. We haven't been intimate in months, and I got tested for everything after I left just to be safe. The implications stung. Is that what you think of me? That I'd cheat on you? I don't know what you do anymore, he replied. That's the point. Is my therapist, Reed said, sliding a business card over the table. I don't trust you. I was briefly thrilled when she suggested that we try couples counseling if you're serious about making changes. However, after I had spent 20 minutes laying out my case, Dr. Winters wasn't easily swayed. Vicky, I notice you're focusing entirely on Reed's behavior, she said after I had spent 20 minutes explaining that relationships are systems. Couples therapy meant accountability, that someone else would hear about my behavior, and that I would have to admit that I had done something wrong. Our first session was a complete failure. What part do you believe you? Reed claims you told him to man up when he expressed feeling depressed. Dr. Winters pressed. Do you think that was supportive? I've been nothing but supportive, I insisted. I'm the one who kept things going while he checked out. Life is difficult, and everyone experiences sadness from time to time, I defended. 2 days later, I received the text. I don't think couples therapy is the right step right now. You can't just fall apart because things get tough. Dr. Wires concurs. I need to focus on my individual healing. As my life started unraveling, I became increasingly desperate to regain control. My obsession with Reed and his betrayal consumed me. I checked his social media hourly. I drove by Liam's apartment regularly. I interrogated mutual friends for any information about him. My work performance tanked. I missed sales targets, snapped at clients, and showed. I was late to important meetings. I was placed on formal probation after missing another critical deadline. I crossed a line when I called his workplace anonymously, expressing concerns about an employee's mental stability. I convinced myself I was doing it for his own good. If he was truly depressed, his company should know, right? In reality, I was trying to destroy one of the few stable things he had left. My lowest point came when I created a fake email account pretending to be a concerned friend and sent screenshots of Reed's most personal journal entries, the ones I'd photographed before he left, to several of our mutual contacts. I was trying to prove he was unstable to validate my version of events. It backfired spectacularly. The cease and desist letter from his lawyer arrived 3 days later. The formal language about harassment, invasion of privacy, and potential restraining orders made my blood run cold. My social circle contracted by the day. Belle finally told me exactly what she thought during what was supposed to be a casual coffee date. You need help, Vicky, she said bluntly. The way you're acting isn't normal. The things you're doing to Reed aren't okay. One by one, my friends distanced themselves. Lacey stopped returning my texts after I showed up at her house drunk at midnight, ranting about Reed's betrayal. Janine blocked me on all platforms after I accused her husband, Mark, of helping Reed plan his escape. Even my work colleagues began avoiding me, tired of my constant drama and negativity. The wake-up call I didn't know I needed arrived in the form of a manila envelope. Inside was an official restraining order along with evidence, screenshots. Of my fake accounts, copies of my unhinged emails, transcripts of those damning recordings, and pictures of the gifts I'd been leaving on Liam's doorstep. 8 months have passed since Reed walked out of my life. In that time, I've lost almost everything. My job, my friends, my sense of self, and my future as I'd imagined it. I was officially fired from my sales position when I showed up intoxicated to an important client meeting. My severance package was barely enough to cover 2 months of expenses. With my spending habits and zero savings, I quickly fell behind on bills. My parents refused to bail me out. Turns out they'd never really approved of how I treated Reed either. "You made your bed," my father said. "Now you have to lie in it." With no income and dwindling resources, I had to downsize dramatically. I moved from our cute suburban house to a depressing studio apartment on the edge of town. I sold furniture and designer clothes to make rent. My credit cards were maxed out and then closed for non-payment. Then came the day that shattered what was left of my delusions. I saw Reed at a coffee shop with a woman I didn't recognize. She had curly hair and glasses, nothing special. But the way he looked at her, that's what gutted me. He was looking at her the way he used to look at me. Before I crushed that light out of him, he was animated, gesturing as he talked, fully present in a way he hadn't been in our final years together. My first instinct was rage. How dare he replace me? How dare he be happy when I was suffering? But underneath that, anger was a more painful emotion. Recognition. I recognized that I had never really seen Reed, not the real him. I had seen only what he could do for me, how he reflected on me, and what needs of mine he could fulfill. In a moment of what I can only describe as temporary insanity, I hatched a plan. I would expose Reed once and for all. I would show this woman and everyone else who he really was, the depressed, weak man who'd collapsed under life's normal pressures. I still had copies of his journal entries, screenshots of his darkest moments. I would create a website dedicated to the truth about Reed. The night before I planned to send the link to everyone we knew, I recorded a video explanation to add to the site. I was halfway through my rehearsed speech when I knocked over my wine glass, spilling red all over my keyboard. In my drunken state, I somehow hit upload instead of save draft. My unedited, slurring rant went live. In it, I called Reed pathetic for his depression. I mocked his therapy. I laughed about sabotaging his recovery. I boasted about reading his private journal and using his deepest insecurities against him. Worst of all, I admitted, even bragged, about how I'd manipulated and controlled him for years. I didn't realize what I'd done until the next morning, when I woke to an exploding phone. Somehow, the video had spread through our social circle like wildfire. Former friends were messaging me their disgust. Reed's lawyer had already sent a formal legal threat. Even my mother called, her voice breaking as she asked, "Is that really who you've become, Victoria?" My public humiliation was complete. I couldn't show my face anywhere without receiving glares or whispers. The professional connections I'd hoped to leverage for new employment now wouldn't return my calls. As a final cosmic joke, I later learned that this woman, Avery, works in mental health advocacy. She runs support groups for people recovering from relationships with narcissistic partners. Reed had met her through his own healing journey. So here I am, alone in every sense of the word. No partner, no friends, no career, no prospects. Living in an apartment I can barely afford, working a retail job that covers rent, and being avoided by anyone who recognizes my name or face. Sometimes I drive by our old house. Reed sold it months ago. Apparently, he couldn't stand the memories. The young family lives there now. They've painted the door a color I would have hated. Their children play in the yard where I once imagined our future children would play. I see Reed around town occasionally. He never notices me. Part of the restraining order is that I must maintain a specific distance. He looks healthy now. In his eyes, he stands straighter and laughs more easily. Sometimes Avery is with him, their hands intertwined, her head on his shoulder. What haunts me most are those 4 stupid words. Man up. Everyone has problems. 4 words that revealed my character more clearly than anything else could have. 4 words that marked the beginning of the end, though I was too blind to see it then. I'd like to say I've learned my lesson, that I've grown and changed and become a better person. But the truth is, I still find myself making excuses. I still find myself thinking, if only Reed had been stronger, if only his brother hadn't interfered, if only people understood my side. Even now, facing the ruins of the life I destroyed with my own hands, I struggle to fully accept responsibility. That's the real tragedy. Not that I lost everything, but that I still don't completely understand why I deserve to lose it. I'm telling you all this not because I expect sympathy. I don't deserve any. But as a warning, watch your words. Notice when someone reaches out with their pain. Recognize the privilege of being trusted with someone's vulnerability. It's so easy to destroy someone who loves you. So easy to mistake cruelty for strength. Reed will never hear this confession. He's moved on to a life where I'm just an unpleasant memory, a cautionary tale, a bullet dodged. Meanwhile, I'm still here, still alone, still struggling to understand how I became the villain in my own love story. I told him to man up when what he needed was gentleness. I told him everyone has problems when what he needed was acknowledgement of his specific pain. I demanded strength from him while showing none, myself. And now I have exactly what I created,